And welcome to this video, which is going to prepare you for your IDU mock exam, which is on Friday the 3rd of March. And this video is going to focus on three main areas, and it's going to look through all of the pre-release materials and be able to help you to identify the connections to the subject disciplines, which are the disciplinary grounding, which we know to be science and language and literature, the connections to the global context, and also the connections to the concepts of adaptation, ingenuity, and progress. Okay, so we have 8 pre-release materials. Number 1 is the predator and prey graph. Number 2 is the video about the garbage patch the size of Texas. Number 3 is the 5 ecological relationships article, which we have looked at in INS as well. Number 4 is looking at contemplating the relationship between us and the natural world, which is an article. Number 5 is looking at another article about conservation, which has been written by the National Geographic Organization. Then we have number 6, which is what is non-genetically modified organisms, and this is focusing and looking on genetically modified crops, and this is again another article. Then we have number 7, which is another article about the 7 major advances in 3D printing technology. And number 8 is about Google unveiling its self-driving cars, and that is an infographic. And this infographic explains why Google have decided to create driverless cars. Source 1 is the predator and prey graph. Okay, so when we look at the global context connections for scientific and technical innovation, one of the things that we're going to be exploring is how do we understand the world in which we live in, and whether it's in the natural world or whether it's in the non-natural world, there are predators and prey. The concept of strong versus weak, survival of the fittest. And so we have predator versus prey in the animal kingdom, but we also have predator versus prey in terms of humanity. As an example of that would be discrimination of a minority group by those who are more powerful. So in terms of understanding the world in which we live in, it's knowing that there are predators and there are prey. There are animals which are strong and there are animals which are weak, and in terms of the relationship between those animals, then generally the stronger animals will eat and kill the weaker animals, generally. If we look at the exploration focusing on the impact of environments on human activity, certain species are protected because if they're not protected, they will become endangered animals and they could become extinct. Therefore, humans, because we can be kind, have decided to set aside some land which will be conservation areas for certain animals, or safari parks that will help maintain and look after the natural habitats of certain animals. Rules and regulations that humans have decided upon is that if there is a unique species living in a certain part of the land, then we can't build on that land if it's going to completely destroy that natural habitat of that species. So unless we can provide a suitable home to relocate the species, then humans cannot build on that land, or couldn't drill on that land. For example, we're not allowed to drill in the Antarctic because obviously that will kill all the polar bears and the seals and everything else like that. Because we care about our environment, then that limits what we can do as humans, because we don't own the world, we live on the world, but we live on the world in collaboration and in relationship with other animals and species as well. The third connection with the first source would be the impact of the interaction between people and the natural world. The natural world being anything that is not man-made. So, as humanity progresses, we want to build more houses or shopping malls or factories so that we can progress, and we'll use our ingenuity to do just that. And therefore, as we take up more land, it means that we may take up more natural resources than we need. We may cut down more trees than we need, and this causes deforestation, and therefore that impacts the habitat and the ecosystems of that rainforest, as an example. In terms of competition for space and for resources, this can cause conflict between communities and also cause conflict between nations. A key example of the impacts of our interaction between people and the natural world would be China's development of the islands in the South China Sea, which is causing tension amongst different nations, and there's obviously arguments between China and other Asian countries as to who actually owns those islands. So again, it's an impact which is not necessarily a positive impact. Okay, source 2 is the garbage patch the size of Texas. Now, source 2 is a short video, mainly with some subtitles, a little bit of text, and graphics to explain the purpose and the point of the video and the message behind the video. Again, with this, we can look at the impact of the interaction between people and the natural world. Again, there are positive and negative impacts. They can have short-term impact or a long-term impact. Humans, we're consumers. We buy many products, we buy many things that we like to have, and these things contain plastic or materials that are not biodegradable, and therefore this waste impacts the natural world through various pollutions in terms of the factories which may be used to manufacture the products, and also when we throw away the waste, then this can cause landfill sites, which is harmful to the environment, and it can also pollute the sea. And impact the species which live in the sea and depend on the sea for their survival. There's an impact of scientific and technological advances for communities and environments. If we don't want to have all of this pollution, then we can use our ingenuity to improve the situation and create positive change instead of negative change, such as creating recyclable bags. Source 3 discusses the 5 types of ecological relationships, and again, this is an article, and it's something that we have looked at during INS lessons. You will notice that it's been slightly edited. This focuses on the natural world and its laws in terms of the relationship between certain species in the environments, and also the impact between our interaction between people and the natural world. Because as humans compete for space and use up more space, that can disrupt and severely damage the ecosystem and habitats. So there is quite clearly a negative impact of our interaction with the natural world. Source 4 is all about contemplating our relationship with the natural world. And one of the connections we can make with the global context is how do we adapt environments to our needs. Okay, our relationship with the environment and our understanding of the environment and the ecosystems and the biodiversity that's connected with it allows us to know how to manage our resources more effectively. It allows us to know how to limit the impact that this can have on other species, habitats, and ecosystems. We can also make a connection with the impact of scientific and technological advances in communities and environments. So we can use new technologies like green energy, renewable energy, use our ingenuity to create green cars or cars that are battery powered, like the Toyota like the hybrid, like the Tesla. And this helps to reduce pollution and harm to the environment. And it also helps our community because we know that air pollution severely impacts the health of humans as well. Another benefit to communities is that by investing in new technology and green technology, this creates more industries, and as a result of creating more industries, it can improve the health of the economy. So this can create a sort of win-win situation between humans and the natural world, which can only be a good and positive thing. Source 5 is all about conservation, and therefore one of the connections we can make with the global context of scientific and technical innovation is the impact of the environment to human activities. So as humans use resources, or natural resources, if we overuse them now, then our environment will change, the natural resources will deplete and become more scarce more quickly. So therefore, we need to adapt our energy use to survive. And in order to be able to do that, we can use our ingenuity through scientific and technical advances so that we can become more reliant on renewable energy. And therefore, we're adapting the environment to our needs while also helping ecosystems and biodiversity to sustain and to thrive. Source 6 is all about genetically modified organisms and connecting that with genetically modified crops. This relates strongly to scientific and technological advances on communities and the environment and the impact that that has. Again, the impact can be positive. So, in terms of genetically modified crops, it enables humans to have access to food that we're not so reliant on the seasons. So, for example, if there is drought, which would normally result in a shortage of crops or no crops at all, we can use genetically modified crops and still produce the goods that we want to use to eat and to survive. The negative impact of genetically modified organisms, as stated in the article, is that genetically modified crops are dangerous, they're a radical technology, and also genetically modified crops is based on an outdated theory of science. Source 6 is also an example of how we adapt environments to our needs. Again, to remind us of the point that humans are consumers and we want for many things. And therefore, again, if we want certain things that only grow in certain seasons or certain locations, then ordinarily we would have to wait for them, we might not have access to them. But through genetically modified crops, we can get them more regularly and more often, and they could last longer. Also, the genetically modified crops could be spliced with extra vitamins in the food so that it's more beneficial for us in terms of our nutrients and vitamins. So, source 7 is all about the impact of 3D printing technology in the medical field. And as we look through the article itself talks about the 7 major advancements that 3D printing is making in the medical field in terms of us being able to print organs, print stem cells, print skin, bone and cartilage. We can also create surgical tools. It can help with cancer research, and it can also help with heart and blood vessels. So all of these items here are a great example of scientific and technological innovation, because we're using the technology to innovate how we would normally do something and how we would normally solve a problem between patients. For this article, we do need to bear in mind scientific perspectives on these areas in terms of ethical considerations, social considerations, moral considerations, and also safety considerations. So this kind of connects very well with Science Criteria D. And finally, source 8 is talking about Google unveiling its driverless cars, and this is an infographic. The infographic has information and is represented in a graphical form. It talks about 4 main points in terms of how the driverless car will work through its GPS receiver, its laser range finder, the video camera that it uses, and its radars on the vehicle itself to ensure that it's still safe. Again, the article here talks about the benefits to the environment and to humans by making roads safer, hopefully reducing congestion and also pollution. So that's an overview of the 8 pre-release materials. Thanks for watching. Adios.